Hey, everybody, welcome back to Tim's Vinyl Confessions and welcome back to the Kansas Deep Dive series. This is episode 7. We are up to the next studio album, and we have entered the 1980s with Audio Visions with this very futuristic looking album cover, right? Does this, like Chad, I've got my good friend Chad Green here. Chad, does this not scream 1980 to you?
Oh, you know what? It's so funny that we're starting off the conversation with 1980. Uh, when I was listening to this most recently, just to refresh myself, uh, my first thought was, man, this does sound like 1980. Now, that's such an abstract idea if you've never visited 1980 before. But yeah, the album cover and even the production sound, and even I think some of the piano and some of the just
Yeah, the
I don't
keyboards,
know,
the keyboard
some of the
sounds
tone in the album.
yeah,
Hmm.
yeah, the keyboard sounds of the day, and yeah, and that's not necessarily a bad thing, but yeah, it is very tied to its time sonically. But this is
Oh, I
really
don't think it's
cool.
a bad.
I really wanted Chad on this particular episode. Well, number one, Chad contributed to this book, Let It Be Your Guide, the Kansas Album Review, and Chad is in the Audio Visions section. But this is really kind of a full circle moment because my Kansas collection began back in 1992 with Audio Visions on 8-track. And
Hmm.
Chad had a lot to do with me finding this 8-track. As a matter of fact, if anybody's got my Unspooled book, there's a chapter in the book that Chad contributed about us going to find that. We ended up with that and Kiss Dynasty. And yeah, you know, it's embellished a little bit, but it's not far off from the truth.
No, and it's a fun reminiscing moment for us because we were teenagers. We were inspired by classic rock. Suddenly, we hadn't really had nowadays with YouTube and streaming services, and even me moving away from a small town to a bigger city that has a classic rock radio station. Like those were all new experiences that I had after this. When we were teenagers in a small town, there was sort of a limited amount of exposure you could easily get to classic rock.
Yeah,
You
for
would get
sure.
some, you would get
Yeah.
some here and there, but uh, this is around the time where we started to really explore Kansas and Queen and for me Rush at the time.
Yeah.
You beat me there to them, but 38 Special and all Led Zeppelin
Boston,
and
Nazareth, Led Zeppelin. Like,
yes, et cetera, et cetera. Supertramp for me, and on and on and on and on. So yeah, we'd heard some bits and pieces. Some things we remembered, and we're like, oh, I remember hearing a certain song by a certain band. I wonder what else they have. And so, and it was quite a bit of effort at the time, and a fun, loving pursuit.
oh,
Actually,
I
find these
have,
albums
yeah,
and
I
find
have
them
such
within our
good
budget
memories of
because
it,
we were,
Chad, because
yeah,
I always called it the classic rock renaissance because
yeah.
it's really hard to describe to younger people that have grown up with the internet because everything wasn't a click away.
No, it
Um,
wasn't. And we had to pay money for it.
yeah, and
We had to scrounge up money. We were working at Pete, we were making pizza, we were delivering
yeah,
pizza. I was counting beer cans and pop bottles at the,
yeah,
we were doing all these crappy jobs and making pretty much minimum wage and a few
yeah.
tips here and there. And the money that we got, some of it went to used record and used tape stores, cassette stores, used CDs, sometimes brand new ones. And you were always gambling, like, oh, if I spend $20 or $10 on this album, is it going to be any good?
Yeah.
So there was anticipation. It was really fun, actually. It was a lot
And
of fun.
and it was also, especially when we're getting into this territory of this.
Uh-oh.
Veil of secrecy. These things were out there, but we had no way of getting that access. We didn't have any older, neither of us had older brothers or, to
Yeah,
guide us one way or
yeah,
another.
yeah,
So it
yeah.
was like we were just flying blind. Now, like, you know, I guess if it was a band like, say, Aerosmith, who came back in popularity and then some in the late 80s, then yes, their older albums were still in print. You could go get them. But, and to a certain extent, Queen, because their albums were all reissued. But when you had a band like Kansas that hadn't had a hit in years, it's like you're pretty much looking at older, used items, and good luck finding them all. So,
Right. Yeah.
it was, but at the same time, when you did find something, it's like, this is mine. This was hard won. Like,
it was fantastic.
it
Like
was
a
such
good
a sense of
example,
accomplishment.
I know we're gonna talk about Kansas, and we will. But a great example of that, I think, is not Bohemian Rhapsody, sorry, A Night at the Opera, that album. Like we kind of encountered that album right before it researched, and nobody had heard, we hadn't heard of it before.
It wasn't right around the same time. Like, it was so close to the same time, maybe within a week of me hearing it on the radio.
Yeah.
But I'm so glad, because love the song. And I'm so glad that I heard Night at the Opera, because that's what I wanted to buy, and not the Wayne's World soundtrack. There's nothing wrong with the Wayne's World soundtrack, but I'm like, this is a band I want to know more about instantly. I want to know more about this band, because they sound like 6 bands in one.
It was what an experience. And so that was a mutual friend of ours. His dad had all these classic rock albums, and we were like, wow, what is it? All of a sudden a treasure trove appeared. And these were vinyl albums at the time, and this would have been around 1990, early 91, maybe. Yeah. I think early.
It was 92. We were in grade 12. So
it would have been it would have probably been January. Like it was so
early. It was really early in the year. And it was, he had a bunch of different ones. And I also remember, and I actually talk about this in the book, we went over to another buddy's house who had a couple of boxes of records in his bedroom, and he said his aunt gave them to him. And I remember seeing the album cover for Kansas, Monolith, and thinking, this is so cool. I don't know what it was about that cover that just drew me in, but so I was already kind of interested. Okay, Kansas. I've heard of this band. And then again, classic rock was a relatively new term in 1992, right?
And
it's almost not old enough to be classic rock, right? Like,
and I'm certain I'd heard Dust in the Wind. Like,
I think I definitely heard
even in the small town, AM radio station.
Dust in the Wind.
I must have heard Dust in the Wind.
And Carry On Wayward Son were both big hits. So I'd at least heard of them, but I do remember, again, working at that pizza place, downstairs making dough, and I'd hear Carry On Wayward Son, and I'd be like, I like this song. This is good. So I said, this is definitely a band to check out. And right around that time, I can't tell you, like, anybody watching this, it was so hard to find good rock 8-tracks. You could find 8-tracks.
Oh, yeah.
They weren't what we wanted. They weren't, I'll just put it this way, they weren't what we wanted.
When we first started looking for 8-tracks, we found Eagles' greatest hits everywhere.
Yes.
And maybe even Nazareth's greatest hits. And that was
a common one too.
That was a lot. The rest of it was Conway Twitty and
Eddie Arnold. Connie Francis. So and to be quite honest with you, this was an odd one to find, because this is the only Canadian version of this I've ever seen. It wasn't a very big album in Canada. So and it's really funny, before getting ready to do this episode, anyone who watched the deep dive that Steve Fleck and I did on Left Overture and Point of No Return, I used the 8-track song list, or the order they were on the 8-tracks. And then with Monolith, I said, no, we're not going to do that anymore. However, it's not that I lied, it's just that I forgot. Because the first time I heard this album, Audio Visions, and when I had a working 8-track player, I was used to the songs in the order that they are on here, which is not the running order they are on the album. So
I think
I want to go through them in this order. Now, we're going to talk about each song. People are like, finally, they're getting to it. Hey, this is not only, not only did Chad contribute to this book, folks, but he's one of my oldest friends, so we always have a lot to catch up on.
Sorry about all of the inside tangents
Yeah,
and
inside baseball.
things. Yeah, but you know what? Okay, so let's. Yeah, I do want to get into it, but before we do, I want to say one more thing about 1980. That's kind of where we started off. And I said that this, like we both agree, this has a sound that you can tie to 1980, which sounds really that's an abstract concept if you don't know about 1980. Probably everybody that's interested in Kansas probably does know what we were talking about by that. I found when I first put this album on to listen to it, and then re-listening to it later on, especially in advance of this, just to get my mind into it. It hits like when you first with the first song. I don't know what's on the first song on your 8-track is, but when Relentless
It's the
comes
same
on,
one as on the album, Relentless.
okay, so when Relentless hits, that song starts off punchy,
Yep.
and excellent, and that's that sound that I'm talking about. It's tight, it's clear, it's well produced. It's not. I'm sure it was probably recorded in 1979, maybe, but I don't know that, but maybe it was, and so
Maybe
maybe
partially.
It's 70. Maybe
It
there's
came
some
out in
70s in there.
September of 1980. Let's see if it says on here.
But it's fresh. It's and I was thinking about Rush a little bit and I don't want to compare Kansas to Rush or anything, but just when Rush came out with Moving, maybe even Permanent Waves, you could say, or Moving Pictures, like they went into that shorter.
Oh yeah, Permanent Waves is definitely a
song format. It's tighter. It's more a little more condensed.
You go from Hemispheres to Permanent Waves. It's a big difference sonically.
That's probably the best. That's probably the best comparison I could think of.
This was the second time.
The 70s Kansas is really long. You could call it a little bit self-indulgent, meandering. I know that's prog rock. That's the prog rock thing, and I don't even know if Kansas likes to use that term, but and I don't even know if they fit into prog rock entirely. But
I think that they do, but that's another story.
I think they do, with a bit of a Midwestern prairie style and some violin. I don't know, but I think so. And so this album just starts off really like crisp and fresh, and here I am talking about fresh, but 1980 was quite a while ago, but it still has that sound.
But you're right, it doesn't sound like any of the 70s stuff. This was the second time that they'd self-produced. Now Monolith was self-produced, and I like that album a lot, but that's a very dark and moody album. This is not dark and moody. This is a really, I mean, there's something about the fact that it's got 1980 on it. It just really sounds like it's paving the way, because it's definitely more old style commercial sounding than most of the 70s stuff. There's more, somewhat more straightforward songs on here. But yeah, Relentless is just, it comes right out of the gate, and it is punchy is a good word for it. It's got a nice thick sound, just nice guitar riffs that's doubled up by the keyboards. It's not in 4/4 because it's like da 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 da, like it varies the time signature. So there's still those prog elements there, but it's really catchy. And yeah, this was the first thing that I heard from this, and it is the first song on the album. It also happens to be the first one on the 8-track.
It's, to me, it sounds like it's a strong anthem, and like I've probably never heard this played at a sporting event or a rally or anything like that. I probably haven't, but you could.
It definitely, they've got a few songs like that, but this is definitely one. I mean, instead of playing, as we've said, we love Queen, but instead of playing "We Will Rock You" for the 100th time, try something different, and sooner or later it'll catch on, and it'll become one of those songs.
This could do it.
Getting off track a little bit, but I remember in the early 90s, because I wasn't a sports guy, so I never went to any sports games, but I'd hear people in class, and they'd be talking about this old song called Black Betty, and I'd be like, what is that? And that song came, like, it was a minor hit in 77, 78, but it got brought back because it was used for a warm-up song, because it's got that boom, boom, boom. And all of a sudden people our age know this song that we never would have heard of by this band that ram
Yeah.
jam that was like unknown. But anyway,
Yeah.
um,
Well, I think Relentless has energy.
yeah,
I think it has a really good energy that you could. I'd like, I could hear this song lots more times and it would still be energizing to me.
yeah, it's one of my favorite Kansas songs, and it's like when I hear it, it's like I don't think I've ever just listened to it by itself, because when I hear it, it's like, okay, I want to listen to the whole album now,
Mm. Uh-huh.
because it starts it off. So we are going to go in the 8-track order. So we're on program 1 now, and the next song is Loner, which is this really fast. It's got double bass drums in it. It's this really crazy, like 2.5 minute burst of energy. What do you think of this one?
Oh, I love this. I'm gonna just I'll just spoil the anticipation, but I really like this album. I like all the songs. I love this song. Loner. Like I was like, well, I think okay, this would be fair to say. I think we're both introverted. I know I am. I know we are. We are. Let's just admit it.
Yeah.
I
Mm-hmm.
always thought that was a bit of a flaw. Like I feel like extroverts approach that as though it's some sort of a personality flaw or something. But I don't know. This song, "Loner," I mean, that's a little bit about that.
Yeah.
And it's the message to somebody who maybe isn't, and maybe isn't really maybe I don't know. It's read the lyrics, you can kind of tell what's happening, and so it kind of can relate to it. It is a great. It has a heavy intro. It's a busy song. It's got some fast drumming, catchy, groovy chorus. I'd love to hear this. I think you could take this song and like slow the tempo down and even do like an
Yeah.
acoustic version of it. Like this song has so much going for it.
Yeah, you met
And I
that's
kind
and
of like
that's
that. I
folks,
like
that's
that they
something
kept it
Chad
short.
talks about in the book. You could
Yeah.
approach a song like this in a lot of different ways. But yeah, it's got but then it's got this strumming, beautiful acoustic guitar, and
Well, I think you could do a Muzak version to this. It could be like,
well, it's like we'd be at
no, I
Burger
really
King or
like the
something, and
melody of this song.
you'd listen to you. It's like where the vocals would be, and you're like, I know that tune. What is this? Yeah,
Yeah, right. That's it. I know. I like it. I like that they kept it short. They tend to have really long songs that they just kind of after a while they don't stand out as much for me if they go on too long sometimes. Although again, I don't find that with Xanadu from Rush, but
right.
I don't know. Sometimes I really like a nice short song so that it sticks in my head more. This is a good
One of
one.
the things that I really love about this band is that, I would call them a prog band, but I like the fact that they had this commercial edge to them, and it really kind of started with this album. Um,
Mm,
they could do short, catchy songs too.
they're good.
They
Yep.
had that in their arsenal, and not every
Yep.
prog band does. Not every prog band wants to, but I like the
No.
fact that they were sort of undefined by their genre, and just
Yeah.
they just did good music. I don't know how else to say it. Yeah,
Yeah.
Loner,
Yeah.
short and sweet to the point, and then program 1 ends up with the first song on side 2 for real is "Got to Rock On." I know this was a song we talked about in the book. You really like the piano in this song, but what are your thoughts on this now, having listened to it again?
Just the same. This is I, it doesn't super stand out to me. Like, this is the kind of, and this is not a statement on Kansas, but just the way my brain works. I forget songs, and then when I hear them, I'm like, oh yeah, I remember this song and I like it. Like this is one of those songs. I'll completely forget that it even exists, but then when I put the album on, it'll come on, and I'll be like, this is so it's really good. I don't know what else to say about this one. It did remind me a little
I
bit
kind
of
of envy
Billy
that,
Joel, which is
because
weird,
it's
but
nice being when you're overly familiar with something, but if you can forget, then you're like, oh yeah, I like this song. I don't have
yeah.
that gift.
Yeah. Well, it doesn't always work in my favor, that's for sure. I'm good short
Chad used to
memory.
be notorious for calling me up and said, I heard this really good song on the radio. I said, oh yeah, what's it called? I don't know. Who sings it? I'm not sure. How's it go? I can't remember. but it's really good.
I know it's just
And again, those moments were if it was an old song and it wasn't going to come up in the rotation again, it was lost in time,
it's just
right?
gone. Yeah.
You couldn't you
Why
couldn't
I even
Shazam
mention
it. There was
it?
no YouTube. You couldn't
So
write down a few lyrics that you can catch and Google the lyrics. Just
yeah, there was
Wild
none of
West,
that.
man.
Which that's exactly what I do now. I have to do that quickly or I forget, of course. So I'm like,
Yeah,
oh, and I discover things that way. I'm like, oh, I didn't know this person sang that, or I've never heard of them. What else do they do? Right. So yeah, that's very helpful for me. But uh yeah, so I do really like this song. It has a nice swing, there's good rhythm, there's piano in there. This is just standard Kansas stuff, good quality Kansas is what it is. And it did remind me a little bit of Billy Joel, which a lot of people don't know. Some of Billy Joel's stuff that's maybe not a hit, like some of his stuff is singer
album
songwriter,
tracks. Yeah.
piano, jazzy piano. I don't know if it's jazzy, but it's right. So I guess that's a good term, album track. That's what this is. It's good.
Yeah.
It's a good one.
So we clunk on over to program 2, and we get what ended up being the biggest hit from this album. It only peaked at number 40, but hold on.
Well,
Is this an
this is
early example of a power ballad?
I don't know. Yeah, it's easy, melodic, uplifting. I love the little intro of the violin. Like they never seem to miss a chance to throw the violin in, and it's good. It's really good. It's a trademark. This is a great example. This, if you listen to Kansas, they have a specific sound, and this album just captures that really well. This song does as well. Yeah, and it's funny too that you mentioned about that was it's the only hit. Like this whole album is one of my favorites, and yet it doesn't really have any hits. Like there's no Dust on the Wind, there's no Wayward Son.
Yeah.
There.
It
I still,
it barely went gold, basically on the backs of what came before, and it ended up being the last album that the original 6, uh, member band was on, because Steve Walsh left after this. He would come back, but next up, this is a totally different kind of song. Don't Open Your Eyes. This one's kind of got a mysterious kind of quasi spooky feel to it. Who sees you when you're sleeping? Who knows the thoughts you're keeping? And I like the turns of phrase in it. Like the first time around, it says, "Don't open your eyes too soon, because it might be me." But then the second time it says, "Don't open your eyes too soon, it might not be me."
well, and so that's an example of some of the clever songwriting that Kansas has, like with lyrics. Like now, I think kids these days would roll their eyes and be like, "That's lame." But I don't know. I love a good.
Don't get me started on modern pop music for being lame and repetitive. Holy cow!
But I love a good pun or a clever lyric, or I find that they do some of that, like "Point of No Return." That's a good example right there, right?
And
They
it's
spell no in the knowing instead of the no in the negative. Like,
and the other thing is,
I appreciate those things.
It's the vocals too. Like you can have a lyric that's kind of if you just read it, but if you've got a great vocalist that can sell it, then it's not. You're like, I like that. That's cool. I can see. I get it.
Yeah, so this is a good song. There's some quick tempo violin. It's some really sharp cutting violin in it. There's a really nice melody. It shifts around. This is a fine example of what the Kansas sound is. This whole song, and it's when I say quick tempo, it's like I compared it to like a classical Mozart allegro, which when
it's a very frantic. It keeps a very frantic pace.
It's really good. Yeah, it's good. This song is, there's so much talent in this song. I'm not a musician. I can't even begin to just like.
Yeah, no, I know what you mean. So they simplify a little bit for the next one. on the 8-track. No Room for a Stranger. This has got some great piano. It starts up, ding, 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 to get that cool little descending line, and it's kind of a bluesy song.
Yep. And it
And I
almost
like the
sounds like,
lyrics. If you ever felt like jumping out of a window on account of your pride, if you ever
yeah,
felt like has like a scum in the gutter because someone hurt you deep inside, yeah.
very introspective lyrics in this whole album. Well, in all of Kansas songs, really. But and I gotta admit, I'm a mod. What's the right term for
Moderate.
amateur Kansas fan? I'm an amateur Kansas fan. There's
This
a
is
better
and
term for that.
this is the thing that's significant for me, guys, is that Chad and I have been hanging out since the early 90s, and we both got way into Queen, way into Zeppelin. I got way into Kansas. Chad, not so much until now.
I always liked them, but their songs all sort of blurred together, and they didn't stand out to me. Although
I dove
with a few
right
exceptions,
in. So
yeah, with a
it's
few
cool that
exceptions. So yeah. So here's a good example of a band that I liked, but I didn't like enough to spend $20 per album on, because you had to do it at the time. Now you can get it. Now I
yep.
can listen to it for free, but that's a whole other issue.
Yeah.
I know that's not great, but anyway, at least I can
But you've got
access the
access
music.
to it anyway.
Yeah,
It's
and you know
more.
what? Hey, in my defense, I listen to a lot of music for free that I already paid for.
That's
I
very,
could
very
just go
true.
get the CD. I could just go put the vinyl on, but I'm not gonna. I'm gonna watch it on YouTube. It's just
Yep.
convenience, but I already paid for it. But anyways,
Oh,
I won't go into that.
I do that a lot, but
Yeah, but so as sort of an amateur Kansas fan, I don't always know all the behind the scenes stuff that's going on, like who wrote what, or who wrote the lyrics, or who's singing, or whatever. But
right.
the more I I'm getting into it sort of all over again, the more I'm taking interest in that stuff too. And
I'll give
this
a good
song
example, a
actually,
really good example of that, Chad, I think,
this
is
is an
Queen,
example.
because each of the four guys in Queen wrote songs.
Yeah.
Freddie sang the multitude of them. But
Yeah.
once you listen to Queen and you listen to them enough, even if it's always Freddie singing, you can go, that sounds like a lyric Brian May would write.
That's right.
Or
Yeah.
that this has got to be a John Deacon song, or this is something Freddie wrote himself, or that's something Roger wrote. And Kansas is the same thing. Once you get into them, you're like, well, that's a Kerry Livgren song. That's a Steve Walsh song. So yeah, it's just part of that. It's part of that immersion process. So now we're over to program 3. The songs are all mixed up. This is actually the second song on the album, but it's the first song on program 3. Anything for You. This is the one that I think sounds like Supertramp, specifically Logical Song, because it's got that piano wind up like that. I love this song. I think it's really good. It could have been a single.
Yep. Yeah, and you know what? I'm a Supertramp fan, and I thought of Toto before I thought of Supertramp. But then when you mentioned that to me previously, I was like, oh yeah, you're right. You're totally right.
I could
yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
But it's totally different once the vocal melody comes in. Totally different.
So this song here is definitely, like, again, the whole album, but 1980 stand. This this is the stuff. This is the sound of 1980. This song.
Yeah. Even the font that the song titles are written in reminds me of old video game packaging. And I love that. So I love it's cool. Like, obviously they were trying new things. I will say the best thing about it is at least they kept the logo on this album. They didn't abandon the logo just yet.
It's so funny.
Anything for You is a great, it's a great up-tempo pop rock song that could have very well been a hit single with the right push. But now we're getting it. I think maybe the most purely prog song on here. As a matter of fact, it's the oldest song on the album. The song was actually written for Monolith, but it didn't end up on the album. It was recorded for Audiovisions. No One Together. This is pure, like, anybody that's like, oh, they've gone commercial, they're writing short songs. This one is, you listen to it and you go, okay, now that's Kansas, if you're a longtime fan.
Yeah. Yeah, and so the way that I sort of describe that commercial sound is that, which I don't think is bad. But
Nope.
it sounds like it could, like this song, and I'm making a compliment to the song. I think this could be a theme song or a movement
Yep.
in a musical. Like this could be used in a movie, in a play, in something.
Yep. It's definitely a Kerry Livgren song, and it's very uplifting, and it's complicated.
Uh-huh.
And obviously, the band themselves, even though it wasn't a single, the band must have liked it, because this and Hold On are the only songs from this album that ended up on their 1984 best of. So the fact they put No One Together on the best of obviously shows they thought a lot of this one. And I love all the movements in the song, and there are a lot of them, a lot of parts.
Yeah.
um, One thing that's very so now we're getting to the last two songs that we talk about are on program 4. One of the songs that's very, very maybe not of its time, but definitely of the 80s is Curtain of Iron. This is very Cold War, you know, a little
Yeah.
Cold War mixed with
Well, they
Revelation.
say,
Like
yeah,
it's there's a lot in
they
here.
say, yeah. So somebody poetically says curtain of iron, but nobody called it that. They always called it the
No,
Iron
the Iron
Curtain.
Curtain.
And
Yeah,
so the Iron Curtain was a common theme in movies, in popular culture, in the news, in,
yeah. It was omnipresent.
it was that's the perfect term. It
The
was
thought of the
omnipresent.
threat of nuclear war. I
So
mean, yeah,
so with some poetic license, they said curtain of iron. Well, that's fine. It's that they're talking. They're certainly referring to the Iron Curtain,
yeah.
and it was a real thing. It was a real thing to have these nations with a different ideology, and the citizens of those nations were subjected to so many restrictions. I'm not referring to them, but the authorities behind all of this. Um, they seem to want that control, and
Keep the citizens in their
so
place, sort of thing.
there was a mystery that went with that, to the people on the other side, us, like in the Western nations or whatever you want to refer to us as.
Yeah. Well, and if you think
We
about,
didn't know what this mystery was, and if we were going to get if it was going to lead to warfare, and all of these things. So Iron Curtain and the Cold War, and which could have easily been more than a Cold War. That's what they're singing about. It's covered in movies and pop culture, and the news would have been full of it, and we witnessed that.
yeah, I
Part
mean,
of our
that's what we,
childhood.
at the breakfast table, right? Getting ready, we're
Yeah,
going to elementary school,
yeah,
and they're talking about Gorbachev
yeah.
and
So it's not a fun, happy topic, and
no,
I think they lend, like, I mean, keeping that as the theme of the song. Like, I don't know if they wrote this song and thought, what are we going to call this thing? What's it about, right? Or maybe they had an idea in mind. I don't know. I'm curious to know.
I'm not sure if the music would have come first or not, but I like the movements in it. I like the midsection where they've got Robbie Steinhardt taking part of the vocals, the whole rumors speak of war in all the nations, and
This
but
is
then
a
it
heavy
stops up
song.
and
Yeah,
it,
this is a
yeah,
heavy song.
yeah.
You could get a metal band could cover this song, and
It's
it would
heavy
sound really
lyrically,
good
and it can be heavy sonically.
for sure.
And
Yeah.
and yeah, I don't think younger people realize just how prevalent the Cold War was in popular culture. I mean, you had the movies Red Dawn, you had The Day After, and you had, um, even things like, silly like Back to the Future, where Doc Brown steals plutonium. That's Cold War stuff.
Yeah,
And
that
if
is.
you're a Rush fan watching this, basically all of Grace Under Pressure is Cold War oriented or war
Mhm.
oriented or whatever. So,
Yeah,
but I
yeah.
really like this entry into that, sweepstakes, if you want to call it, and it's just a powerful song. And then it ends. The 8-track ends as the album ends, on my opinion, a really another nice ballad, Backdoor.
Okay, I'm going to tell you right now, this is one of my favorite Kansas songs.
Yeah,
I
poetic.
really like this song.
Yeah, yeah. I love the synthesized bagpipes at the end and the marching drum, and
Uh-huh.
yeah,
And it's got
it's
the melody the melody that they use. I'm not going to hum it or anything for anybody because it's not going to work. But uh, go listen to it. And this melody is memorable. Like, you know, it's
Yeah,
this song has
da, da.
sticking power. It has earworm hooks in it, I think.
Yeah.
Well, why don't I hear this? I feel like I've heard this played somewhere other than just me throwing the album on. I feel like I've heard this somewhere, and I probably haven't. It's probably just like deja vu or something, but this song okay, so I've been watching Stranger Things, and I know you watched it. You watched it. I don't know if you did. You finish it?
I think
Did you
I
watch?
think I'm as far up as there are new episodes. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I'm almost there, but of course, it's known for using 80s tunes and stuff. And I mean, this might be a little too early for that series because that series starts in like 82, I think. But um, if someone were to do some new television series that's with or a movie that's with a setting of 1980, man, maybe they'll use this song. I think it would make it. I think it would be fantastic. So you use it somewhere somehow. This is a good
Well,
song.
here's the thing: you can get
It
away
should
with
come
using
back.
a song that's older, but one of the things that I couldn't get out of my head in the last season of Stranger Things, which is supposed to be set in 1986, they do just "Play with Me" by Extreme, and I'm like, that's not right. That's 1989.
Oh,
Like,
that is that the last episode?
I can't remember how they use it, but I'm like, that's 3 years ahead. Like, that's not.
Okay, you just that was a spoiler, Tim. I haven't finished
Oh,
yet.
I mean to say, what I mean was, they played
Oh
an
shit! Well,
extremely new
no, I'm looking.
song.
No. You know what? I'm looking forward to that. I'm looking forward to it. We both like Extreme. It's good.
Yeah. But it's like, and I get it, but at the same time, it's like, why? Somebody must be a fan, and they shoehorned it in, you know.
Somebody
But
did. Yep.
music can do
Somebody
that. I
did.
mean, there's a whole generation of younger people, and both of my kids included, that first heard "Carry On, Wayward Son" by watching Supernatural. So, hey, it's
Hmm.
whatever it takes to get in. And I think "Carry On" was on one of the Rock Band games or Guitar Hero, one or the other. Anyway,
Yeah.
um,
There's that. We should. I got to be careful not to go too far on this as a tangent, but that's what I do. But if you were listening to Deep Cuts, I think it's called on satellite radio,
yep,
like what is it, Sirius XM radio
yep.
now? I don't know. I don't have it, but if I get a rental car for work, I sometimes get it as a treat. But like that, you could hear this backdoor. I would like to hear it on somewhere.
It
Like,
wouldn't surprise
please,
me,
somebody play this in public.
Yeah, it
Really
wouldn't
good.
surprise me, but that's the problem, and that's one of the reasons that I really wanted to get a book out so people know there's a deep catalog in here that is worthy of some heavy, listening.
Well, yeah.
It's
So what happened is somebody says, we really like the Kansas sound because Kansas does have a
Yep.
style, a sound, right? Which you get into in the book. And then they always go to the, Carry On, or they go to Dust in the Wind, or, there's a couple others they could use that they use. But there's a lot of other things. And this is a good example. If anybody's listening and you're in your artistic and you're like writing a script or you're doing something and you need a soundtrack, like
you
maybe
and
you
you
could
don't
use
want to
Backdoor. It's a great
license
song.
the usual songs. And I would also say if you're curious about getting into Kansas and you're like us, you grew up in the 80s, you could do worse than to start off with an album like this because it doesn't not sound like 70s Kansas, but at the same time it is very, very early 80s. Um, it's just I just think it's good music. It's you know always been one of my favorite albums of theirs. So I'm really glad that after 32 years, you finally get what I've been talking about all this time.
Well, see, I was close. I was always kind of right there, but just I didn't put the effort in. That's all. That's all it was. It wasn't that there was no obstacles really. I always liked Kansas. I just
Well,
didn't put the effort in to
there
listening to their
wasn't.
other stuff.
It wasn't as easy to find their albums as it was, say,
No,
Queen or Led Zeppelin.
no,
That was another thing. But
no. Yeah.
yeah,
So,
So,
okay, so if anybody is listening in and you're a casual Kansas fan, like I've always been, you know, hey, this is such a good album.
yeah.
And yeah, put the effort into to take, what is it, 43 minutes long? I wrote it down
Yeah, it's
somewhere.
not
I
an
made a
overly
note.
long album.
43
Yeah.
minutes. It's 43 minutes and a little bit. 43 minutes, a few seconds of your life. I think it's worthwhile. It's
And
good,
it's all
really good.
chronicled in here, along with the other 14 Kansas studio albums to date. And Let It Be Your Guide to Kansas Album Review. Link below. Chad, thanks so much for sitting in. And we're going to continue the deep dive. I've got some different co-hosts lined up, but yeah, here it is. All these years later, we've immortalized this album in print, along with the other ones, but still. All right. Thanks everybody for watching Tim's Vinyl Confessions. We will see you later.